Have you ever noticed that like little voice in your head that's always kind of nitpicking everything you do? The one that says things like, "Oh, you're not good enough," or like, "You're totally gonna mess this up."
Yeah, for sure.
Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into ways to deal with that inner critic. We're going to be pulling some ideas and excerpts from Taming Your Inner Critic, a guide to self-compassion. And one of the things that I found really interesting in this book is this whole concept of self-compassion, like treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend.
Yeah, that inner critic, I mean, it's such a universal experience, right? It's
Yeah.
like this deep-rooted thing. Probably comes from, way back when we needed to identify threats and protect ourselves. But like these days, it's kind of like on overdrive all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it can really lead to a lot of self-doubt and anxiety. It's not helpful.
It's so true. So it's not just me then.
Oh, no, not at all. I
Yeah.
think we all experience it to some degree.
That's oddly reassuring in a way, but also like, how do we deal with it?
Yeah.
The source we're looking at today talks about this idea of self-compassion.
Yeah.
Um, what exactly does that mean? Is it just like giving ourselves a free pass to just do whatever we want?
No, no, not at all.
Okay.
Self-compassion is really about treating yourself with the same kind of kindness and understanding that you would give to a friend, right? It's acknowledging that, yeah, we're not
Yeah.
perfect, we all have imperfections, but we don't need to judge ourselves harshly for them.
Okay.
It's kind of like having a supportive friend in your corner who's always cheering you on even when you mess up.
Yeah, I love that analogy because it really makes me think about like how I talk to my best friend when she's feeling down.
Yeah,
I would never tell her she's a failure, but I'm so quick to say that to myself.
right. We're often our own worst critics.
Yes, exactly. And the book actually, it even mentions that, this tendency we have to be way harsher on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else.
Hmm.
There's even a quote that says, "Would you say this to a friend?" That's such a powerful question to ask ourselves when that inner critic pops up.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, like, some of the techniques that we can learn about in this book really come in handy. One of the things that they talk about is something called cognitive reframing. It's like instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as facts, try to look at them as just thoughts, not truths.
Okay.
Challenge them a bit. Ask yourself, is there another way to look at this situation? Or what evidence is there to support this thought that I'm having?
Right. So it's about actively kind of questioning those narratives
Exactly.
instead of just letting them run wild.
Yeah, don't let them take over. Another thing that they talk about is thought stopping. So like, when you notice that inner critic just like spiraling out of control, literally imagine a big stop sign. You just tell yourself stop. And what that does is it interrupts that whole negative thought pattern.
Okay.
And it creates a space for you to kind of come in with a more compassionate response.
These are really practical tips. I'm liking this. I can really see how practicing these things could make a huge difference in how we feel about ourselves. The book also talks about, the impact of self-compassion on our overall well-being. Like, does this actually make a difference in our lives?
Oh, absolutely. There's actually a ton of research out there that shows that self-compassion is linked to things like greater resilience, lower levels of anxiety and depression, and even improved relationships. I mean, when we treat ourselves with kindness, it creates this much more positive emotional environment,
Yeah.
which can then spill over into every area of our lives.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. If we're constantly beating ourselves up, we have nothing left to give to other people or even to, pursue our own goals.
Exactly. Self-compassion is not selfish. It's actually essential for our well-being.
Okay.
And for building healthy relationships. It allows us to show up as our best selves for ourselves and for the people around us.
So to wrap things up, it sounds like taming our inner critic isn't about like totally silencing it, but it's about learning to manage it
Yeah,
and kind of like turning down the volume a little bit with self-compassion.
for sure.
We can challenge those negative thoughts, practice things like thought stopping, and ultimately just treat ourselves with the same kindness that we would offer to a friend.
Absolutely. And I think as a final thought for everyone listening, imagine that you're facing a challenge today, like something difficult. How would you approach it differently if you led with self-compassion instead of self-criticism? That's the power of changing the way we talk to ourselves. It can have a huge impact on how we navigate the world.
It really can. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Yeah.